Folks, here I am again with one of my favorite stories. It happened a few years back, but I love it. And when I read it, it's like I'm doing it all over again. It's called Hunting Wild Hogs. I was on my annual visit to visit my son Leroy and his family in the Deep South. He invited me to go hog hunting with them. Now, Leroy is a steward on a big plantation, or they just call them farms now, about 2,000 acres, to help with the damage caused by these wild hogs in those, agricultural areas. And it's awful what a pack of hogs can do in a 100-acre field in one night. This recreation also seems to serve as therapy for him from his real job. The large farm has a swamp with a creek meandering through it, bordered on all sides by huge fields. A large portion of it is a tree farm, but they also grow cotton, peanuts, soybeans. This makes a very attractive habitat for these wild hogs, let me tell you. My first evening in the swamp was with my son and grandson Wyatt, who was only 5 years old at the time. We were observing a meadow from a pop-up blind. Wyatt was still hunting for his first deer or hog. Now, his brother Zeb shot his first hog when he was 5, so we were having a little sibling rivalry. Wyatt, I'm proud to say, did get his first deer, and he also got a hog that year. My time hunting with these boys is always just quality time. We didn't kill anything that evening, but we just enjoyed the time together and sharing Georgia peanuts in the shell. There is no time ever wasted in the swamp. It is a special place to connect with my grandson, with nature, and with my maker. My second hog hunt was a little more stimulating. I had to climb up into this tall tree stand. Leroy asked me if he thought I could climb that ladder, but he knows his mama pretty good. He knew I would either climb it or die trying. Zeb was 7 years old then, and he'd climbed up it like a squirrel. I managed the ladder okay, but when I got up to the top, there was nothing to pull me up on this bench. I looked up at Zeb's sweet little smiling face and said, "Well, Grandma's only got one more step." I do believe his smile conveyed to me the strength to master the last step to that platform. But let me tell you, folks, something happened to me when I got on that little platform in that tree stand. I was sitting there on that bench up against that live oak tree with that Spanish moss dangling all around me. Let me show you what happened. I became the queen of that swamp. One of my employees insisted that I wear this. They thought that would be my crown for this hunting hog story. So my grandson and I just sat there together eating Georgia peanuts and whispering very quietly. I can't think of a better place to bond with my grandson. He's my oldest grandson. I told Zeb about a hog experience we had on that hillside farm where I grew up. We raised all kinds of animals on that farm, including the domestic hog. I'm telling you, there's nothing ornerier than a hog. It would be easier to drive a cyclone than it would be a hog. We had this one old sow. She always had her babies in the awfulest places, just every time. I heard my dad tell my mom where she'd had them. He said it was in a gully behind the barn. I told my little sister June Ann, she was about 5 years old then, about those new baby pigs location. We decided to sneak down there and see those little piglets. That old sow was up at the barn getting something to eat. June Ann decided to crawl down in that gully and pick up one of those baby pigs. That old little piglet started squealing. I'm telling you, that old sow come out there showing her teeth, making all kinds of scary noises, came charging at my little sister. But our dad burst out of that barn. I'm sure he grew 2 feet and gained 100 pounds in just a few seconds. He jumped in between that sow and my sister and saved her, stopped that old sow right in her tracks. He was sure our hero that day. I guess you know we kind of got in trouble with that. We got a big old lecture about never to pick up no more baby pigs. Zeb enjoyed this little story. The sun had set and soon Leroy came back to pick us up from the tree stand. Our third wild hog hunt, it seemed everything was in our favor. The wind was blowing in the opposite direction. We had seen fresh tracks near the tree stand. Zeb and I both had that real positive feeling that evening. He said, you know, I think we're going to get one tonight, Crazy Grandma. That's what they call me, Crazy Grandma. I guess with this thing sitting on my head, you kind of know why, okay? We sat there quietly sharing our peanut snacks. The sun was starting to set. Zeb said, Crazy Grandma, I think those pigs is going to be here pretty soon. He said the babies will come in first. The mama hog will come in later. Now, can you believe that they're that ornery, that they let their babies come in there first and see if they get shot, and then if nothing happens, then they come in. Now, they're not very nice, those hogs. I also had a feeling they were near us, too. Well, then they appeared just like Zeb said. The babies came in first. There were 5 half-grown pigs. A little later, there she come, that big old ugly sow meandering in behind them. Zeb and I made eye contact, and he whispered, without moving his mouth, I'll let her get in a good spot. He very carefully positioned his gun, putting the crossbars on the shoulder of the sow. He looked at me very confident and gave me a slight nod of his head. Well, about this time, it appeared to me that the sow had stopped and all she was doing was looking at me. I'm sure it was my long white hair shining like a beacon up in that live oak tree. I'm sure the sow thought I must be some kind of alien bird she had never seen before in the swamp. I whispered, shoot the pigs, Zeb. He quietly asked, where are my earmuffs? I said, oh, they're on my knee. I carefully slipped them off of my knee and over to him. I nodded again. Zeb, shoot the pig. He said, where are your earmuffs, Grandma? I said, I don't have them with me. He said, no, I'm not going to shoot. I don't want to hurt your ears, Grandma. Well, I'm here to tell you, by this time, my heart is beating so hard, I'm afraid the sound of my loud heartbeat would scare all the pigs away. Now the sow is still zeroed in on my hair. I said again, shoot the pigs, Zeb. I will cover up my ears. He finally shot the hog. It flinched and ran off. Zeb very confidently said, I guarantee you, Crazy Grandma, that was a good shot and I got her. Now Leroy was hunting across the farm with Wyatt and said he would hear our shot and come if we got a shot. He also forbid us to leave the tree stand if Zeb shot one. The injured hog can maul you in a heartbeat, he informed us, and they can too. So there we sat quietly waiting to be rescued. You can imagine, we were so excited over getting that pig and then couldn't even get out of the tree stand. He came about an hour later with Wyatt. I could tell the way he walked up to the stand that he hadn't heard the shot. I said, didn't you hear our shot? And he said, no, when? I said, almost an hour ago. Zeb and I then climbed down out of that stand. Zeb showed his daddy about where he'd shot the hog. Leroy soon discovered that dead hog in just a few yards. While Leroy drug her in with a rope, the boys joined Crazy Grandma in a big celebration hug. We got into the gator that was parked in Swamp Creek. Leroy tied the sow behind the gator and we drug her out of the swamp. He then loaded the hog on the back of his Jeep. There was a lot of giggling and laughing on our trip home. I'm telling you, we was a pack of happy hog hunters. My daughter-in-law had the gate open for us when we arrived home. She was wearing a great big old grin on her face too. I watched my son skin the hog and pull the fat off of it. They will smoke it in a great big smoker about a day. It takes about a day with controlled temperatures. It is awesome food, I'm telling you folks. I think it has a better taste than the domestic pork. I watched Leroy process this hog and couldn't help but think how much easier it is now than the way we used to have to do back on the farm. We would have to scald them in a big kettle, and that kettle that we scald our hogs in actually sits out in front of this store. It sits out there with some flowers and stuff in it, but that's the very kettle that we used to scald those hogs on the farm. Then we'd have to scrape the hair off of them. It's kind of a nasty mess. The fat was rendered into lard, leaving those wonderful cracklings to eat too. Now the following is a little closure on this story. I recall more than, now when the story was written it was 40 years, but that was 10 years ago. So I recall more than 50 years ago. We were attending a rendezvous in Prairie du Rocher, Illinois. The sportsman club there had butchered some hogs and made kettles of fresh ham and beans. I guess some of them kind of got in too big a hurry, or maybe they drank too much. I don't know what happened to them. But anyway, they didn't do too good a job on those, cleaning them hogs. I was carrying my son on my hip. I purchased a bowl of beans and soon noticed a great big old piece of fat meat with some big long whiskers in it still floating in my beans. I thought as soon as I put this child down, I would remove that whiskered fat. Well, when I put Leroy down, I looked at that bowl of beans. The whiskered fat was gone. I was almost afraid to look at my son, but I had to. I looked at him. He had a big old mouthful of something he was chewing on. Juice was running out of both sides of his mouth. And he swallowed it, whiskers and all, before I could do anything. Well, now this is the same hog-killing son. Do you think this little event might have instilled a permanent dislike for the cloven-hoofed beast? This might be yet another reason he has such a passion to kill the destructive wild hog.